Party of the Philippines confirms the death of its top leaders, Benito and Wilma Tiamzon.
Will have an impact, no? Even probably sa revolutionary movement. But ang bahala rito at dapat tingnan, no? Dahil nga doon sa reports na when they were already arrested but they were summarily executed. No?
Ang epekto nito, yung pinaglalaban ng mga old guard, dahil nga nagbabago na yung pananaw, ideology, and of course pakikibakan ng left, it will definitely subside. No, in terms of the strength and strength of ideology of this group of people.
The Armed Forces of the Philippines denies the allegations made by the Communist Party of the Philippines that it captured, tortured, and killed Benito and Wilma Tiamzon.
First, Communist Party founder Jose Maria Sison dies in exile, and a few months later, Communist Party leaders Benito and Wilma Tiamzon are killed. The deaths of these so-called vanguards are seen as a big blow to the armed struggle, with comments saying that the CPP-NPA is now a spent force. Is the revolutionary movement in the Philippines dead or dying, or is it just in another transition as new leaders emerge? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. And welcome to the Monday edition of The Chiefs. I'm Ed Lingao, and with me tonight here in the studio is Ana Marie Pamintuan, the editor-in-chief of the Philippine Star. Yay! May kasama ako ngayon.
Happy Monday! Di happy ka nga?
Happy talaga. Mami, ano malaking story ngayon?
Happy din si Major General Benjamin Acorda.
Yun ang malaking story
the
ngayon.
new PNP chief.
But any surprises there ba? How was he in the ranking of seniority?
Ang Major General yan, merong mga Lieutenant Generals, and sabi nila dark horse daw siya. Although,
may Lieutenant General, so hindi siya
Major
nasa,
Gen siya. And, pero considering na he's Ilocos Norte yan,
Yep.
di ba?
Mhm.
And nag-serve din siya in the Provincial Police Force.
And I understand he was also Intel.
Intel chief naman siya ng PNP, so that's a very high office then.
Mm-hmm. But do we know anything about his track record in terms of, at least his beliefs in terms of how, for example, a drug war
very
could be or
low-key,
should be?
di ba? We should know, di ba? Kung gano'n, at least non-controversial. So, maganda.
Then again, pag Intel chief kasi medyo maingat yan.
Oo nga, kaya nga. So we will see. Wala pa namang major pronouncements.
But I'm sure that's something that everybody's waiting out for. Kasi, for example, when Chief PNP Azurin took over, yung kanyang declarations as far as the drug war were concerned,
Yes.
quite significantly different from the previous administrations.
Although that was in keeping with what his superiors were
Yeah.
saying, di ba?
Yeah,
Yun
the
actually,
president.
di ba? Including the Justice Secretary, di ba? Interior Secretary, Justice Secretary, pati si Solicitor General. Iba na yung sinasabi. Talaga nag-iba na siya.
Iba yung pihit na eh.
Yes, although, ikaw, ano bang tingin mo? Tama ba? Puro rhetoric ba yan o talagang nakikita siya?
Well, obviously there's been a slowdown in
Yes. Diba?
in the manner of enforcement of the drug war.
Yes, although sinabi din ng PNP na hindi naman daw matitigil yung may mamamatay dyan, hindi ba? In the operations. But we will see. We're waiting for a major pronouncement in line with this
Okay.
issue.
But in the meantime, we will begin our discussion on another issue with regard to security, the revolutionary movement after this break. The Chiefs will be right back. Our question tonight, the revolutionary movement in the Philippines, is it dying? Let's ask our guest, Assistant Director General of the National Security Council, Jonathan Malaya. Mr. Malaya is also the senior lecturer at the UP National College of Public Administration and Governance. We also have security analyst and Professor Chester Cabalza, the founder of the International Development and Security Cooperation. Magandang gabi, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us. Welcome back to the Chiefs. Sir, finally, you're here in person.
Finally, sir. Lagi lang tayo sa online. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening, sirs. Well, let me start off with that. Joma season last year, and then now that Tiam zones, who is left sa CPP, and what happens to that movement?
Well, it is in its dying stages now, no? Kasi based on the latest data we have, out of the 89 guerrilla fronts of the Communist Party of the Philippines, New People's Army, 67 has been dismantled since 2018. So in 2018, 4, 2019, 13, 2020, 10, 2021, 21, and 2022, 19. So what we have now is we have 22 remaining guerrilla fronts all over the country, but 18 of these have been severely weakened by focused military operations and the combined efforts of the National Task Force LCAC, and we only have 4 active guerrilla fronts in the country. So essentially, we are in a good place. No, the military considers this that we are at a strategic victory level, and hopefully in the next 2 years we will have total victory over the CPP and PA.
Sir, if you don't mind, kasi I also heard that in 2006 when Gloria Arroyo announced the all-out war against the New People's Army. Sabi niya, in 1 year, wipe out yan. And I can also imagine that in 1977, when Jose Maria Sison was captured in I think in Ilocos, there was also that prediction na goodbye Philippines na yung Communist Party and the New People's Army. So what would make it different this time?
Well, the difference is the whole of government approach or whole of nation approach, which is the National Task Force LCAC. Because during the time of President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, the approach to the problem was the CPP-NPA or the CTG problem is a military problem or it's a police problem. And then through the NTF-LCAC, there was this understanding that it has to be a whole-of-nation approach. It cannot be solved merely by a military solution. You will have to have the support of the other government agencies to bring development to these barangays. Because the problem is, pagpasok ng military, no, they clear the barangay, they move on to the next barangay, but development is not pursued in those areas. And because of that, bumabalik at bumabalik lamang yung New People's Army. The other problem is we are not doing anything about recruitment because they continue to recruit in urban areas. Since we are doing something about that, they're facing less and less, they're having less and less of recruited individuals going up to the mountains.
Mr. Cabalza, you're nodding your head. Do you agree with this assessment, or you have your own group doing your own assessment?
Yeah, I have 3 answers for this one. No, we have my first argument is that communism is the longest way to capitalism. We've seen
Sorry,
that
the longest way?
It's the longest way to capitalism because basically,
Okay, yun,
ultimately, the reason why you have these kinds of revolutionary movements because of the non-distribution of commonwealth, no?
Wealth.
And of course yung kanilang injustices and sentiments basically. So it's a socio-economic problem more than a military problem. As long as the government will not serve the basic needs of the people, you will see a lot of revolutionary movements in the country. So basically, you have to trickle down, have inclusive growth. That's the answer for that. It's a long-term and short-term solution for this revolutionary problem. Okay, that's been done by Indonesia, Malaysia in their own movements in the past. No? So may models tayong nakikita. So yung military, band-aid lang yan. No? Short-term ano yan. And secondly, we have to remember that these are competing ideologies. And we should remember that, of course, no, in the academe, no, we welcome this cradle of many ideologies, no. But beyond that, it's a revolution of the stomach. Pag gutom ang tao, syempre magre-revolution yan. So that's something that we wanted to do. That's the reason why the government is trying to transfer development to different cities and provinces right now. Kasi dapat whole of nation approach, yun yung sinasabi ni Sir kanina.
Paano yun? Ang dami pa rin nagugutom. Do you share his assessment that we are achieving already, or we have achieved already strategic victory?
Me?
Yes.
Well, I would say that not yet, because of course, if you try to look at the, I'm looking at the socio-economic outlook, no. in Southeast Asia alone, we are the 7th placer when it comes to GDP. Talo pa nga tayo ng Vietnam. No? Next to us is Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar. What happened to the Philippines? No? And now we're trying to exit from that low-income middle economy to becoming at least a higher income middle economy. So that's the projection of the government right now. And also, once we do that, then we have to distribute this wealth properly. Kasi otherwise, kung mag-military modernization lang tayo, tapos hindi naman nagugutom ang tao, naturally, they would feel not part of that growth. So, tuloy-tuloy pa rin itong problema natin.
Sir, going back, sir, kasi you said nga, 67 of 89, is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Guerrilla fronts have been neutralized. But it goes back to that question nga na the vacuum that is left by that neutralization has been filled by good governance and by economic development. And going back to Professor Cabasa's you have to look at the socio-economic aspect as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
But how far are we as far as that is concerned?
Well-
kasi in the end, of course, it's a revolution of the stomach.
Yeah. The way to handle kasi the communist terrorist groups or the communist insurgency, it has to be a multifaceted approach. So we do focus military operations, which has led to the dismantling of 67 out of 89 guerrilla fronts. And we've also cleared 3,340 barangays. Formerly, these barangays were affected or controlled by the New People's Army. Now, we only have 409. Now, this is the first time we have reached that stage. 409 remaining barangays, and the estimated armed strength of the New People's Army is now down to around 2,000 personnel in 22 guerrilla fronts all over the country. And also, yung loss of support, widespread loss of support coming from many parts of the country. 79% of the LGUs have denounced the CPP-NPA. Now, going to the issue of leadership, dan sila nawalan because of the ideological light nila, which is Joma Sison, passed away. And then, the top leadership have been neutralized as well. Itong si Tiamson, this is a very significant development because of focused military operation in Samar Island, he tried to evade the military, and there was an encounter in Catbalogan, which led to their death, which was accepted or which was acknowledged by the Communist Party of the Philippines last Friday. So we are in a good place because out of the members of the Central Committee, 9 of them have been neutralized already. Okay? So in terms of leadership, in terms of focused military operation, and in terms of bringing development, nagagawa na rin natin yun because of the Barangay Development Program. We've invested some 28.4 billion pesos since 2021 to bring development to these areas that have been formerly controlled by the CPP-NPA.
Pero sir, of course, those are good numbers. But in the end, it's whether the public feels the 28 billion. I hope you don't mind. Pero, we spend billions for development work. But sometimes, I have no way of knowing now, but sometimes it appears to be lacking in terms of impact sa taong bayan. So how are we sure that this time, doon na pupunta sa dapat puntahan?
Sa atin siguro, sa Metro Manila, hindi natin masyadong nararamdaman because wala namang existential threat to the government ngayon, ang CPP-NPA. Really, their effect is in the provinces. But if you go to the provinces, you will see the difference. And ito namang Barangay Development Program, it's a line item in the GAA. So it is scrutinized by our senators and congressmen. So everybody knows exactly where the money is going. So the farm-to-market roads, the school buildings, and all of the health centers that are being built, they have a significant impact sa mga probinsya. That is why wala nang mapuntahan ngayon yung mga NPA. That's why we have the statistics which show that we are now at a level of strategic victory. It is not total victory. It is strategic victory, meaning the momentum is with government, and finally we can see the end. Finally, we can see the end, and we hope that we can do this in the next 2 years.
Well, when you talk about victory, sustainability, yun ang tinatanong ng mga tao. Yan. Can you sustain it? Kasi we're talking about other armed threats in the country. Halimbawa, yung Abu Sayyaf, di ba? It's like Hydra, di ba? Laging may lumalabas.
Kung
Well,
hindi
over the
Abu Sayyaf
past.
clans. No?
Yes, the clans. Laging may lumalabas eh. Someone else, magkakaroon ng lull, no? Nagkakaroon ng hiatus. Kung minsan, inaabot many months, years. Tapos bigla-bigla na lang, biglang nag-attack na naman and they have new leadership. Is that still possible? What do you think?
Well, of course, no. We see trends right now. That's the reason why you have to look at the security spectrum of that. No, nakita natin na after communism, the rise of insurgency, we've seen the rise of terrorism and violent extremism. Saan ba nagbo-boil lahat ng ism na ito, no? Because of our experience with colonialism, no? Because of that, they want to suppress our rights and so on. So, and of course, due to miseducation, poverty, and so on, no? I think the most important here would be the transformative leaders from these respective organizations or sectors, no? Kasi it emanates from the leadership eh. Like during the time of insurgency in the Philippines. Actually, dalawa naman yan eh. Si Nur Miswari, in-invite niya si Joma Silsen, sumama sa kanya noon, di ba? In UP. But of course, Joma wanted to have a different path and so with Nur Miswari. So nakita natin yung segregation ng kanilang ideology. But we saw how communism flourish in our society and how they influence other youth, no? Pero lately nakita natin yung roller coaster ng rate. I'd like to mention also one of the factors would be the COVID. Kung bakit humina yung insurgency problem natin, because at that time yung mga rebels natin nasa bundok hindi makalapit sa basic needs for basic services like vaccination and so on kasi huhuliin sila. So we have to of course to consider those factors. And and of course to social media. Kasi ina-expose mo na nun eh. No? These kinds of narratives are very important. So it's not only about the military factor, but you have other factors there like health and social media. I think those are the ways to that strategic victory that Sir was talking about.
So you're not ruling out the possibility that new leaders might still emerge to revive, well, what people are describing it now as a moribund movement, no?
As long as there would be, as long as we address the issues, the social issues of social injustices, socio-economic problems, doon tayo medyo walang lalabas niya. Because people are satisfied when they are fed and stomach and yung brain nila, no. But right now, wala tayong nakikitang successor nila eh. That's how I see it.
Well, ang problema kasi nila, they're now pushed in a corner. No? Their major operations are limited to several provinces already. No? As opposed to in the 80s or the 90s, na talagang malakas talaga sila noon. No? Umabot sila ng 28,000 members in the 80s. No?
Tapos conventional units na sila nun eh.
May mga ganun sila. No? Ngayon talagang they're pushed to the corner. So leadership is very important. So ito nangyari kay Eric Casilao, for example, which was arrested in Langkawi, Malaysia. That's a significant arrest on the part of the Philippine government because he's the secretary of the Southern Mindanao Regional Committee. So these are big fishes na aresto na natin. Member na naman ng Central Committee. So they're having difficulties running away because there has been a lot of former rebels, no, who have been surrendering to government. And since itong mga former rebels nito, tinuturo sila kung nasaan sila. So nalalaman na natin kung nasaan sila nagtatago, kaya nahuhuli natin. So it's critical that we get to arrest more of them and also bring development to these areas because the vulnerability of these geographically isolated and depressed areas is always there if we do not bring development. So sana itong ating barangay development program, which is meant to bring development, will continue to be funded by government. Kasi nung nagsimula tayo, Ed, ang gastos natin doon, 16.4 billion in 2021. Pagdating ng 2022, 5.6 billion na lang. And then 2023, 6.3 billion na lang. Lumilit ang lumiliit. Hopefully, we can continue to fund these projects because yung share ng bawat barangay from 20 million in 2021, naging 6.6 million na lang in 2023. Alam nyo naman ang kalsada, kaya mahal-mahal niyan. Yung mga school buildings na yan, mahal din yan.
So, sir, when you cite the numbers na bumababa, are you citing them out of alarm or you're saying na it's good that we still have the numbers here?
No, ako, it's more of alarm Kasi we have this opportunity now to put an end to the armed rebellion in the Philippines. We can never, as a country, claim to be a middle power or a developed country if we have a communist insurgency here. No? Para kasi sa akin yung Mindanao is a complex problem because it is a secessionist movement born out of years of injustice. No? Itong NPA is a different thing. We are the last. We are, I think, the last country with an armed insurgency. No, the ones in Nepal have joined government. The ones in Cambodia, the ones in Colombia have signed agreements already. The ones in Peru, are they still alive? So we are probably the last. No, so for us to take our rightful place in the community of nations and to address threats from abroad, we have to put our own affairs in order, our domestic affairs. And the CPP-NPA should be addressed immediately in the next 2 years.
So when you cite the numbers na 20, naging 5, naging 6, what you're pointing out is bumababa.
Yes, kasi yung mga barangay kasi na yun, when we first implemented the BDP, the first set of barangays who received the BDP got 20 million. So, kumbaga, they suddenly realized na, uy, totoo pala itong sinasabi ng gobyerno. It's real, no? We can feel it. At kasi ang lagi sinasabi ng kabila, sa lagi nilang sinasabi na hindi naman totoo yung mga pangako ng gobyernong yan. These are all propaganda by government. So, pero nung nagpalit ng amount, from 20 naging 6 na lang, medyo marami sa kanila ang nagsabi na, bakit ganon? Parang nalaglag kami. So I think we should continue to fund this so that the barangays will finally feel that development is coming their way.
Yung putting our affairs in order, hindi ba? That's the biggest challenge actually. As he pointed out, it's an economic problem and bad governance problem. And you mentioned the 1980s. Remember that was the time of the dictatorship. There was a lot of discontent, genuine, and it became the biggest recruiter of the insurgency actually, all the abuses. So ngayon, ano yung tanong ko na lang, ano yung possible pitfalls? You have to consolidate the gains, diba? You're talking of victory.
Yes.
Consolidation, sustainability. What are you saying as possible risks, pitfalls in sustaining these gains?
Well, as I said kanina, it should not simply be a military solution to a problem which is not entirely a military problem. It has to be, again, a whole-of-nation approach. So we should continue to fund the Barangay Development Program. We should continue to ensure that the military gets the support it needs to be able to address this problem. You did mention in the beginning that internal security operations in the future would have to be transferred to the Philippine National Police. We'll have to do this at the proper time. Kasi if we do it na hindi tama, baka hilaw pa. So I think the current arrangements now are working. We should make the transition when we are ready to do so.
That's a good way to start the next segment. We'll just go into a break, so please do stay with us.
For staying with us here on the Chiefs. Still with us, National Security Council Assistant Director General Jonathan Malaya and Security Analyst Chester Cabalsa. Gentlemen, may gustong i-discuss it. But before we go to this shift in strategy, I want to ask muna, what are the prospects for resuming the peace talks? Because after Joma season died, that was what people were saying na, isn't it time to negotiate from a position of strength and tapusin na natin to with talks?
To be honest, there is no prospect of peace talks.
Nobody's talking about it anymore.
Only the left is talking about peace talks.
Okay.
Kasi we already learned from our experience in the past that every time they have a setback in the field or every time that they need to regroup or every time that they need to take a breather, they ask for peace talks. No? So, ito, sila Chamsons, they were released by government precisely for the peace talks.
Consultants.
They were arrested already, they were in jail, and they were released. And once they were released, they were appointed consultants as part of the National Democratic Front. And then, when the peace talks collapsed, they disappeared. No? Hours and years of tracking down these people went to waste because of the peace talks. So there is practically there is no momentum right now, or there is no chance of reviving the peace talks. Kasi nga, as you mentioned, ma'am, we are in a position of strength, so why go for that? What we have are local peace engagements. So, sa locality, if someone wants to surrender, they just go to the mayor. No? The mayor can accept the surrender, or to the Philippine National Police, and they're given all the benefits necessary for them to go back to mainstream society. What is being pushed right now, and I heard about this from the armed forces, is for amnesty. Okay, kasi we do not have amnesty.
Right.
No? Some of these people who surrender have outstanding warrants of arrest issued by the courts. So once they surrender, they're arrested. So parang it's not, it's not a benefit to them if they surrender. So I've heard of this, and I think bills are pending in Congress. That would be a big help to us if an amnesty law is passed, which would cover crimes that were committed prior to the effectivity of the amnesty law.
But
Mr. Cabalsa, you agree with that?
I agree with that localized intervention because of course this is a case-to-case problem. No? Yung problema sa Luzon, iba sa Visayas and Mindanao. And secondly, I commend the strategy of that amnesty. Kasi nga, the most important here would be the reintegration process. Kasi ginawang eksperimento ito sa buong mundo eh. So I hope that the Philippines can perfect it now, given that of course meron na tayong pera and some other programs, socio-economic programs now for these returnees, converts basically. So I hope we succeed on that matter.
Sir, when you spoke about no chance of peace talks, are you talking short term, medium term, or in secularum? Ibig sabihin, talagang wala.
Goodbye, Philippines.
At least right now, kasi we do not know what the future will bring. No? After this administration, there may be another administration. Bakit there might be no need
Pero matagal-tagal
if
yun.
we already have a total victory over the CPP-NPA. But if you're asking me as of the moment, is there any call for it on the part of government, or is there any talk about it? There is practically none. It's zero.
Now, as far as amnesty is concerned, is there any discussion in Malacanang to certify as urgent any amnesty proposal, like what we had in the 1990s with, for example, the RAM, that was very successful amnesty program.
MNLF also.
Yeah, so the integration of so many former rebels back to the military.
Well, I honestly don't know right now the status of the call for amnesty, if it's moving in Congress, no? But it is one of the priority agenda of the armed forces to push for the amnesty.
The armed forces is pushing for the amnesty. I was going to ask you about it. You're working with National Security Council. I'm sure merong mga nagre-resist dyan sa AFP. Do you get that kind of resistance?
I don't see any resistance right now because it's something needed, no, to put an end to the communist insurgency. So I hope it moves in Congress.
Right.
I think the ball is in Congress right now.
But ulitin ko lang, the military itself is pushing for the
Yes,
amnesty.
I have heard of this from maybe si Professor can
Yeah, definitely. Napagod na sila eh. They've been doing that for 5 decades already. And I think they are now focused to territorial defense. That's what they wanted to do now.
Oh, ayan na, shift
Okay,
mo ha.
na-
Ayan na, sinegway ka na na.
Kasi we've been seeing images of Balikatan, we've been seeing images again of the AFP, talagang totally immersed in external defense or going in that direction finally, after all these decades that we've been talking about it. But how feasible is this at this point? Is the PNP in any way prepared, whether psychologically, culturally, or resource-wise, to take over the reins of internal security? Where are we as far as that is concerned, and what needs to be done?
Okay, I think I'll go first. There are 3 schools of thought right now, in the military sector. One is that the AFP should be the lead when it comes to ISO. That's the first school of thought. Second, it's a cost share.
Internal security operations.
Yes, internal security operations. The second is a partnership with the PNP, because right now you have to train the PNP because they don't have that strategy and framework when it comes to internal security. They have ISO, pero more on tactical lang, no? Hindi pa strategic. And then the third would be the shift transfer from AFP to PNP. But of course, is PNP prepared and capable of the ISO? That's the biggest question right now. If you ask me, maybe I'll go for number 2, where you do a cost-sharing phase right now, because you train first the PNP, and once they're ready, then give it to them 100%. That's how I see it.
But as we are right now, ano talaga? Malayo pa yun?
Kasi ang projection naman ng NSC is this year or in 2 years' time, mukhang deads na si insurgency. So,
Sana.
so we're praying for that. So that,
Praying for that.
So that the AFP will focus on TD, on territorial defense. Kasi yun naman ang nakasaad sa constitution natin at saka yun naman yung budget na binibigay natin ngayon sa AFP. But of course, the problem lies with the training and the framework of PNP. Kasi public safety sila, law enforcement. They're not into national security. That's a different thing. Pero kung titignan natin, no, konti na lang naman yung problem natin with insurgency problem, then perhaps let's give it a try. Although we tried, that's the reason why you have the SAF in PNP. That was one of the experiments for them to at least have their own force when it comes to insurgency.
And I do remember there was an administration na in-announce yan, yung the PNP shifting to internal security operations.
Pero hindi natuloy.
In the 90s.
In the 90s,
siya
di ba?
natuloy.
90s.
So what happened there? What did we learn with that experiment?
Hindi pa tayo ready at that
Hindi
time.
natuloy.
Kaya
yes.
binalik sa AFP.
Kaya binalik sa AFP. No?
So what's the status now? Is there a serious discussion within the NSC about this shift?
Yes, there is a serious discussion, but wala pang position on this. No? And I don't want to speak. I'll just speak on my own personal capacity, no, because there's no position on the part of the National Security Council. It's still being discussed. No, I think it is going to be a little bit tricky because, as mentioned, no, there are differences as to how the PNP and the AFP operate. We will have to do some serious capacity building on the part of the Philippine National Police. Kasi if you look at the Philippine National Police, the PNP is mostly LGU-based. No? So you have a police station, di ba, here, and then you have the Provincial Police Office, which manages the municipal police stations or the city police stations. So mostly law enforcement sila. What we can use for anti-insurgency operations would be the Special Action Force, no? Which is not as big as people think it is. I mean, sikat lang sila. No? And there is what is called as mobile force battalions.
Yeah.
Ito mga mobile force battalions, they are attached to the provincial police office, and then there are also units attached to the regional police office.
Parang strike units eh.
Parang strike units. No? But we use them for everything. No, they're not used simply for anti-insurgency. They're also used for security, to augment. For example, may malaking events sa Metro Manila like ASEAN. In addition to the city police stations and the NCRPO, this is the mobile force battalions that we use. So they will have to be trained to be able to do anti-insurgency work. Although they are doing training right now, they will have to be trained kasi yun talaga yung bread and butter ng AFP. Ang PNP, madami siyang ginagawa eh. Diba? Ang dami niyang ginagawa, all over the place siya. So a lot of thinking has to be done. And the timing has to be critical. No? When do we do the shift? Because at the end of the day, the AFP supposedly is for defense and territorial defense. And the PNP is for internal disturbances. So there will come a time in the future that necessarily we really have to turn over to the PNP. But the question is when and how do we do it?
Saka isa pang problema, since you will be deploying police forces, magiging issue dyan if they get into counter-insurgency, counter-terrorism, human rights issues na naman yan. It's not even drug problem eh. Kapag ganyang especially counter-terrorism, because you are defining communist insurgents as terrorists eh. Paano yan? Magkakaroon din ba yan dapat? Do you think there will be a need to hindi naman upscaling, kundi parang integration ng mindset ng police
Yes.
sa the nature of the threat.
To be fair, the Philippine National Police is already doing counter-insurgency operations. They're already doing it. No? They're doing it through the SAF and through the mobile force battalions. But they don't have the critical mass, they don't have the enough equipment to be able to do it solely, no, or that they are solely accountable for this problem. So yun ang kailangan natin ayusin. We have to upskill them, no, and give them the necessary equipment so that they can take on that responsibility on their own.
And I think that is embedded in the curriculum in PNPA, in the academy, and also in the schoolings and trainings of the police force, no? Especially for younger recruits. That should be embedded. Pero nga lang, medyo superficial yung discussions on that, no? But we wanted to have more in-depth, kasi nga law enforcement, human rights, these are very important things, kasi nga araw-araw nila nakakasalumuha yung mga tao, yung public.
Well, kumustahin ko na rin yung program on human rights. There is a continuing program, di ba? With, all law enforcement agencies naman meron, no? Respect for human rights. Kumusta na yung ganong program?
At tuloy-tuloy naman, it's a continuing program, no? There has been a shift also in the DILG. No? I'm no longer part of DILG,
Yes.
but I still observe DILG. It has a different approach now under the new leadership of the department. And the respect for human rights is an important pillar of that.
Kasi yun, ang sinasabi ng ibang grupo, di ba? Puro lang daw yan noise, yung shift na yan. It's not real daw.
Oh, well, you have to ask them. I think you have to ask them that, no? Because mukhang ano naman, the commitment to the shift is there, no? I've seen the way they're doing it right now, and there seems to be a greater emphasis on human rights.
Also, I don't think there was any argument man dun sa government's moves against the Communist Party and, well, specifically the New People's Army, because it is an armed group. I think nagkakaroon ng madalas ng debate dun sa when government starts dealing with what is called the legal left, what government calls the fronts, the legal fronts. Where are we as far as that is concerned, as far as policy is concerned? Kasi very notable yung paghihimay tsaka yung pag-identify ng previous administration dun sa legal fronts as basically as part of the communist movement, as part of the revolutionary movement. But this government, as far as this government is concerned, where are we and how does this government define who belongs to what group?
Well, there is really no change in policy, in terms of policy, no, because di naman nagbago yung kalaban eh. It's still there, no. They are still one big octopus, no, and the armed group is the NPA, the mother is the Communist Party of the Philippines, and the political arm is the National Democratic Front. No? Obvious naman eh, everybody knows that. Just the acknowledgement by the CPP-NPA that the Chamsons were killed and that they were allegedly tortured, no, in a fabricated and concocted story. Kaagad-agad, Karapatan, NUPL, no, they called for an investigation to this murder. So alam naman, everybody knows, no, that this is just part of one big organism, no. But there has been a change in the way the approach is being done.
Yes, sir.
Yes, because as you mentioned, nung panahon ng previous administration, hayagan talaga yon. Ngayon, because we have a new president, and the president happens to be the chair of the National Task Force LCAC, there's also a change in messaging and a change in narrative. So you won't see the same approach done before as now. No, it's going to be a different approach.
Yes, sir. Yung gusto ko himayin eh. So ano yung approach ngayon? Ano yung binago sa narrative? Ano yung binago sa messaging? In specifics. So from what to what?
Hindi, kasi
Bigit na sir na nagbago.
before kasi in your face yun eh. Before in your face, di ba? Parang you say you were red tagging. We're not red tagging, we're truth tagging. Ganun yung approach yun, in your face, no. But right now it's not going to be that. No, it's going to be let the people decide. Yeah.
Okay.
Tingnan nyo kung sino yung mga tumatayo para dumepensa sa kanila, sino yung mga ayaw mag-condemn ng mga ginagawa ng NP atrocities. You can see the propaganda and you decide which you think is the enemy here.
Pero to that point, and I get what you're saying, and that is a significant change. Pero to that point, so as far as the administration is concerned now, the legal fronts, are they terrorist in nature? Should they be considered terrorist in nature as well, or should they be allowed to stay in the legal front?
Well, those who are terrorists have to be declared by the Anti-Terrorism Council.
They're designated, yes,
if
sir.
if these organizations who are legal fronts are declared as terrorists by the Anti-Terrorism Council, then they will be considered as such by the NTF-ELCAC and by the government bureaucracy.
Pero sir, NSC is deputy ng
Yeah.
Federal Council.
Kaya, so ganun ang approach namin ngayon. Yeah.
Sir, what do you think?
Well, for me, I think you have the human
I think it's significant. I mean, it's good that we're talking about this.
the Human Security Act of 2007, no? They're trying to define yung separatists as terrorist. Problematic yung batas kasi nga walang definition of terrorism. And then you have the revised anti-terrorism law recently.
2020.
They're trying to label communists as terrorists. Hindi na naman na-define. So I guess you have to define first who and what is terrorism. No? Who are the terrorists and what is terrorism, it should be embedded in that law. Kasi kailangan mo ma-define siya para ma-implement mo siya properly. I think that becomes a problem right now. But of course, no, we have mechanisms on how to address that because there are other branches of government focus on that, on the identification and of course for the law enforcement. So we'll see what happens later on. It's still evolving basically.
But is there an initiative to clearly define what constitutes terrorism? Are you working, for example, with the legislature to fine-tune? Kasi yan ang sinasabi ng mga bakit nandiyan pa rin daw yung NTF-ELCAC? Bakit daw ganyan yung... recently, some groups were classified as terrorists, di ba? And na-freeze nga yung assets nila.
I think the Anti-Terrorism Act already provides for...
Yes, definition.
Yeah, it provides for definition.
Sa bagay, na-question na siya sa Supreme Court,
and it was questioned in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that only several small portions of the law was unconstitutional, and terrorism, the definition of terrorism wasn't touched. So insofar as the government is concerned, we have a clear legal basis for these declarations of terrorism.
Pero sir, it's also funny kasi si Justice Secretary who's also a member of the ATC wants to declare Arnie Tevez as a terrorist.
Kaya nga, paano yung
Sir, tingin ko that's beyond my pay grade.
Pahabol ko na lang because we're running out of time.
To ask Secretary Rimulya.
Pahabol ko lang, we're running out of time. No? Touch ko lang ng konti yung military. Are we close to achieving credible defense capability? Since we are shifting the roles, no? Magfo-focus na siya sa external defense. We've been talking for a long time about achieving credible defense capability. Are we anywhere near it?
Okay, I will have to answer that question in the context of the modernization program.
Yes.
Because a credible defense posture requires equipment and the ability to defend ourselves with the assets required, no?
Yes.
To project ourselves as a middle power, no? If we consider ourselves as a middle power. So if we look at the AFP modernization program, Horizon 1, we're not at the tail end of Horizon 2. Maganda-ganda na. No? We have one squadron of FA-50s. We have frigates that were delivered. We have fast attack helicopters, no? ATAC. We have fast attack patrol craft from Israel that are missile capable. In fact, we've entered back the missile age because our frigates are now equipped with missiles from India. So we're almost there. No, we're not yet there. No, but the alliances with the United States and with other traditional partners of the Philippines gives us more confidence. No. Maybe ma'am, I can answer that question in affirmative once we've finished Horizon 3. Because Horizon 3 will give us no, the 360 archipelagic defense that Secretary Anyo is espousing. As chairman of the National Task Force West Philippine Sea, there is this governance framework over the Philippines called 360-degree archipelagic defense. And that is what Secretary Anyo is pushing for.
Nakailan tayo? 180 man lang ba? Kaya na natin?
I cannot share right now, ma'am. No? I cannot share right now the details of this. No, but once Horizon 3 has been fully implemented, it's going to be a very good strategic defense posture for the Philippines. Right now, we're not there, but we do have a lot of assets already. We have a lot of Black Hawks. We have jet fighters. No, we are in a much better position than 10 or 15 years ago.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, I agree. I'd like to consider the case of Coast Guard because in the past, no, they were given only secondary role when it comes to maritime security. Now that we are modernizing also the Coast Guard, mukhang bumabalik na sila and they know their mandate already. So once we give that also to PNP, I think they will do a good job in the future. So we have to modernize also the Philippine National Police.
Well, sir, I also noticed the U.S. In this Balikatan cycle, they've been training us in the use of the Patriot missile, the Javelins,
Yes,
the
yes.
Stingers. Does that mean
Yes.
we're buying them? We're buying these missiles? And you mentioned the Indian missiles. You mean we've already acquired the BrahMos? It's already here?
Ilalagay sa EDCA sites.
Not necessarily, no? Not necessarily. Pero natutuwa nga ako kasi nagagamit ng mga tropa natin yung Javelin, yung Stinger, no? But not necessarily because we have our own
Sir, yung Javelin,
budget
mga
process.
13 million isang missile ng Javelin natin.
Yes, actually magastos nga itong balikatan na to. Pinapanood ko eh. No? Meron kasi tayong bidding process. So, we don't... If you look at the bidding, it doesn't really identify what is the country or the system.
Right.
No, it has to go through that long process. So, pero of course, syempre yung mga tropa natin, pag nakita nila na-excite sila, magaling pala to, di ba? Yung, for example, yung HIMARS, no? Very famous in Ukraine, di ba? Used to such effect by the Ukrainian armed forces against Russia. So if we get to buy our own HIMARS system, that really adds to our credible defense posture.
Ilalagay sa Cagayan.
Pwede naman yung sabihin nyo na yung DJI drones ginagamit sa Ukraine, very successful. So, mga DJI drones lang na maliliit.
Meron na tayong drones. We have 3.
Yes, we have drones.
We have drones already. Medyo may konting yabang na tayo sa ating defense posture.
Malapit-lapit na ha. Konting yabang na lang.
Pero sir, the BrahMos, we already have it? Or, kasi last I heard was that we were still negotiating. I don't know if it's already here.
I'm sorry, I don't exactly know right now. Baka lang, baka hindi pa na-deliver, no? But as it's under negotiation, yung natin, yung pagbali natin. But definitely, isa yan sa mga tinitingnan natin to buy missiles for our Navy ships.
The hypersonic missiles. Parati tayo nabibitin sa oras pag ganito eh. but really a pleasure to have you, sirs, on board. Good to have you, especially finally face to face.
In person, yes. Thank you.
Different topics naman na yan.
Anyway, sirs, maraming salamat po. Si Assistant Director General ng National Security Council, Jonathan Malaya, and of course, Professor Chester Cabalza, founder ng International Development and Security Cooperation. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And we hope to have you again very soon. Okay, sir. Maraming salamat for that. And that's it for the Chiefs. I'm Edwin Gao.
We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. I'm Ami Pamintuan.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.